About 15 years ago, Hot Wheels Battle Force 5 aired on Cartoon Network. The show captivated me after the first few episodes, and I became a fan of the character designs and, more importantly to this video, vehicle designs. I've already stolen most of the vehicle designs over the last couple of years, thanks to this little thing called kleptomnesia, but my two favorite designs have always been the Reverb and the Chopper. Today, we're going to focus on one of the weirdest yet coolest designs for a superbike that Hot Wheels has ever created, in my humble opinion, of course. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to a little video series I like to call the Blender Discourse Course, a little series that has turned into something completely ridiculous, honestly. If you're new here today, feel free to hit that like button right next to the subscribe button, and since you're already down there, feel free to leave a comment. Have you seen Hot Wheels Battle Force 5 yet? Seriously, it is a good show. I highly recommend it. You can probably watch most of it on YouTube, even though the quality might not be as good for a show that was aired on American television in 2009, 10, and 11. So after I challenged myself to create a hover bike for my character Laura, I immediately stopped working on this video for about 2 months after realizing how complicated it is to actually make a hoverboard. I then proceeded to go to turbosquid.com and purchase one of the mini hoverboard designs that I found about 2 weeks after recording that segment, found that they were on sale for $20 a piece, and I immediately bought the one that stood out to me the most. The rest of this video is now going to be me having fun with a $20 model that I ended up spending hours texturing and modifying to get exactly what I had in my mind's eye. And then I proceeded to pay homage to another childhood classic, Akira. Honestly, I think it's because I had a big cyberpunk kick in my system that I was just thinking about Akira this whole time. On top of that, I had just recently finished watching Terminator Zero on Netflix, and with that production studio behind the animation being Production IG, aka the people who made Ghost in the Shell, I definitely had some cyberpunk aesthetic in my mind that I just wanted to get out in the funnest way possible. And there we go. That explains the map choices that you'll see a little bit later, but that also does explain a lot of the texturing that I ended up doing during the texturing process of the hoverbike. A lot of neons, a lot of extra neon green, as well as extra neon headlights that were yellow, but they definitely should not have been yellow. I changed them to yellow multiple times because why not? Setting and placing all the textures that I needed to actually use was not as hard as I thought it was going to be, but that does remind me that I do need to take Blender Guru's Blender texturing course sometime in the future. As I got around to putting together the idea for actually using this hover bike, I immediately thought about, maybe I should do the Akira slide. And that is where the Akira kick came in. So I decided, all right, cool, let's get a cyberpunk city, 3 or 4 different cities, but I ended up using one specific one that actually had a good set of roads. I decided to position everything together. I put Laura on the bike, decided to see how everything would actually work. I figured out later on that I should have added a different sky, which I adjusted later. Overall, I was really satisfied with how everything came out. Didn't realize how hard it was going to be to actually pose her on this bike because I forget how to use her rig every time I actually need to make a scene with her. So I ended up putting her back into one of her different outfits. I then immediately switched to testing out some different render scenes for the hover bike as well as the character herself. I wanted to see how everything was going to come out, and I ended up experimenting with a couple of different sample rates as well as figuring out what type of animation I wanted to make, which you'll see a little bit at the end of this part of the video, but I'll show everything at the end of the video, the actual video. This is the part where I wanted to change the headlights and actually make some more neon looking lighting for the entire scene. I wanted to start with the hoverbike itself and then add on to some more neon lighting later on in the actual scene when I got to that part. Primarily for the animation, which I ended up doing a live stream just a few weeks ago talking about the exact same thing, where I did another Akira homage, which you'll also see at the end of this because I was like, it's too good for me to not include it. But I was like, all right, cool. So let's go ahead and do another thing. But luckily, the second time around was a lot easier than the first, primarily because of the fact that I completely forgot how to connect 2 different models together. In this case, it will be Laura's body as well as the hover bike. I completely forgot how to connect them together in order to actually make everything move. Once I figured that out, P.S. it was 3 rings, well, circles in this case, that I decided to use. And I use them all the time when I do animations like this. Just forgot for this moment for some odd reason. After I figured all that out, I was actually able to tilt everything one way and do that one time, because that means I would have had to do it multiple times with different sets of body parts, which I didn't have to do because I connected everything with a ring. But anyway, after that, I got around to actually posing the model, putting everything together. Turns out certain body parts were not where they needed to be, and certain attachments that I put on the character were not where they needed to be, i.e. why I'm spending so much time on her claws as well as the spikes in her arm. That was about 15 minutes worth of setback or so, but it was worth it in the end. I ended up getting a good angle that I wanted to work with, and for the most part, I was actually working a lot in that side panel on the left for most of this time, just trying to figure out what the camera settings were when I actually got around to it. And then when I actually showed it to some of my students, they immediately talked about how her butt looked like it was too pointed out. So that's why I used the alternate angle that I ended up getting. So hooray for me. After I got around to getting the actual posters, getting around to get the Akira slide that I wanted to get, I ended up going straight into the animation section and then playing a little bit with the graph editor. Ladies and gentlemen, when you get around to playing with Blender, avoid the graph editor at all costs until you figure out how to use the graph editor. How do you do those two things at the same time? I don't know. That's up to you. While I was laying most of the groundwork for the next part of the animation to be done, I ended up taking this still and just completely rendering it and then editing it a little bit, and it looked extremely cinematic. I'll show all that at the end as well, but I just really liked how that came out, especially when I colored it black and white. When I made the black and white edit for it, it came out pretty good. Speaking of something coming out extremely good looking and very cinematic, that gives us leeway to go into the next part of this video. I'll keep this next part short and sweet, but like I said before, it was worth including here. But if you want to, you can watch the rest of the live stream in the Blender Discourse course playlist at the end of the video. So during my live stream, I wanted to really do a little bit more of experimental animation and use some more moving body parts and all that good stuff as I was experimenting on the fact that I just want to have a entire hoverbike just roaming through the city. I was just like, all right, cool, let's combine everything together into one thing. So I did that, and after spending most of the live stream putting together the entire track Laura was supposed to ride the hoverbike down, I realized, okay, cool, let's go ahead and try that a little later, because I would have ended up spending a lot more time during the live stream to figure all that out. So instead of trying to replicate the Batman during the live stream, I did all of that later on, just so that I can actually have a little bit more content to actually put together. After that, I decided, all right, cool, let's go ahead and do the second Akira pose that I wanted to do. And I decided to, in the weirdest way possible, put the poster here as well, because why not? I had the Akira poster there with me, and I was just I was literally just replicating the poster just in a more cyberpunk landscape. Even though Akira is in a cyberpunk landscape, I just have, the more solid background for it. And by that I mean I didn't have time to make a white floor, a bluish white floor, just like how the poster has it. But overall, I was extremely happy with how it all came out. But I can say that about a lot of things, just like I have been this entire video, and I'm sorry for the little bit of repetition, but it was just very fun to see how this all came together. I think it's because of how fluent I am now with just making certain poses and just posing characters now. I'm a lot more confident with posing everything, and I think that's one of the main reasons why I just like doing it so much. I think, maybe. Tell me what you think. And here are the finished products. I started with the animation first just because it's the shortest one. I really love how everything came out, especially the lighting, which the neon of Cyberpunk made all that look just extremely good. The same thing here with this cinematic still that I wanted to keep from a earlier animation piece. And then on top of that, all of it came together with just the rest of these posters. The vertical Akira poster was just extremely good. It is definitely a wallpaper somewhere. Oh man, just absolutely just love how everything came out. Let me know in the comments below which one you like the most. And on top of that, feel free to like and subscribe if you like this video. And on top of that, check out the rest of the Blender Discourse course playlist, which should be on screen now. And I will check you all later.